I don't know why I did that. Hello, everyone. Welcome to American Shade. It's Brittany King, your host and your girl. And today I'm going to be looking at a conversation between Joe Rogan and Candace Owens. I've had so many people ask me, do you like Joe Rogan? Do you like Candace Owens? What are your thoughts on them? I was going to do a video where I was just going to talk about each of them, but then I saw this clip and it's of Candace Owens and Joe Rogan talking. And I said, before I even watch it all the way through, I watched like probably 2 minutes of it. And then I realized, okay, this would be probably a good clip to utilize for a discussion about these two people. Also, I wanted to review this conversation in particular because I do believe, especially right now, it's very important for two different perspectives to come together and talk, whether they believe about, whether they agree on everything or not. I think it's really vital that we all put down our weapons and start talking to each other, and specifically to people that have different point of views than ourselves. So you will see my thoughts about how I feel about them as I watch this conversation. So here we go.
Because you used to be a liberal.
Right.
And then you became a conservative.
That's correct.
So what was it?
So the story really starts with high school, I guess. You know how things can happen in your life and they don't make sense when they happen. You're like, why God me? And then you get a little older and you're like, this makes perfect sense.
Right.
So I was the quote unquote victim of a hate crime when I was in high school.
When you say quote unquote victim,
I hate the word victim. No, I hate the word victim. And and again, I can see why early on I sort of developed this mentality that there's no value in being a victim, and people rush to call people a victim. They rush to call somebody the aggressor.
So how do you describe it? That you experienced a hate crime?
I experienced something that was labeled a hate crime. I wouldn't even call it hate crime. I think we live in a label obsessed culture. And before we seek to understand what happened, we seek to
put it in a box.
Yeah.
So what happened?
Someone has to be a demon and someone has to be an angel.
Right.
So what happened was I received some voicemail messages from about 4 kids, and the language was pretty strong. It was like, we're gonna tar and feather your family. We're gonna put a bullet in the back of your head like we did to Martin Luther King, N-word, N-word, N-word.
And you received these on your phone?
On my cell phone, yeah.
How'd they get your phone number?
Well, there was a prank phone call, so I didn't know. I was 4 male voices, and I was in high school at the time, and I was like, okay, I cannot think of 4 human beings that want me dead, that would say we're gonna put a bullet in the back of your head like we did to Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, naming
Where'd you
off.
go to school? Where were you? What part of the country?
Stanford High School in Connecticut.
Okay.
Yeah.
In high school.
Right.
Somebody started doing this prank call and shit on you, and was this?
It was all in one night.
It was all in one night.
Yeah, it was 4 voicemails.
Was this tied to a boyfriend?
No, so I was
jealous?
at a boyfriend's house when I got the calls, and I just put to silent because it was blocked number. So I was I didn't think anything of it. And then when I listened to it, it was some pretty horrific stuff. I definitely cried. I was 17 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually remember Candace Owens talking about this incident when she did a TED Talk. I don't know what year it was. It was a while ago. I would say it was at least 4 or 5 years ago when she did this one. And she's also talked about this on other podcasts. I do find it strange in a way that during those talks, it seems like she kind of minimizes her experience with dealing with racism when she was in high school. I do understand her notion of not being a victim of it, so to speak, because in my other videos that I've done on this channel, specifically the video where I talk about our American problem, which I'll put right here or here, I don't know where I'll put it, but I'll link it, where I talk about my experience with racists and particularly with during BLM when white supremacists was targeting me, and I go into detail about that. And it was actually horrific stuff, but I don't even really talk about it much at all because I'm not, one, that was 3 years ago, and it doesn't, I'm not going to give them power over my life. I'm not going to continue to tell that story because it doesn't affect me right now at all. In that moment it did. I was really this is crazy. Now it doesn't. But I think there's so much more to this incident that is the reason why I find a lack of sincerity with Candace Owens commentary, I'll just say. I think they're going to go into it more, so I'm just going to wait to give my thorough opinion.
And then the next day at school, I took this like philosophy class, and like I don't know what the topic was. I don't know what prompted me to raise my hand and like introduce what had happened last night as like, you know, a segue. Maybe I just needed to get off my chest, but the teacher like spazzed out and was like, "Get up, we're going to the principal's office. Like, you know, you have to report this." He brings me into the office. The principal like freaked out. Like she just like the language was like, you know, it was shocking, you know. And then she called like the resource officer, and then like the next period of my life was like a blackout because it turned out that 3 of the kids I had never even met. Like this was like maybe some kids that had their first beer. One of the kids I was like friends with, but we were arguing because he was upset that I was like spending so much time with my boyfriend.
Oh,
but I didn't. But he's gay. Like it wasn't like he just was like jealous. Like, you know, like just like I used to hang out with him every day. Started hanging out with my boyfriend. It was like a stupid thing.
Maybe he wasn't 100% gay.
Yeah, no, he's 100% gay, from what I'm told. But yeah, so then
he just got petty, and jealous,
and then there's like, here are my 3 friends, and we're all gonna get drunk and call this black girl, and you know, it's easy to say awful things into like this. Like you don't have to look at a human being. Right. Like it's easy to say awful things, but unfortunately for me, one of the people in the car happened to be the current governor of Connecticut's son.
Oh.
So this turned from like some kids prank called to like said some awful things to like front page of the newspaper. Throughout the entire state of Connecticut, a little bit in New York, NAACP outside of my school. It was like this situation that was talking about outrage culture, my first like introduction to outrage culture and the things that sort of formed my thoughts. Like this was a very formative experience in my life, which to me, it was non-political, but it was like, my life wasn't mine. Like I went from like sitting down I was watching Talladega Nights with my boyfriend to being the most discussed person in the state of Connecticut. And what was interesting about it was just that because it was the governor of Connecticut's son that was in this car, they had to get the FBI involved to determine the authenticity of the like maybe she called herself, right? He instead of just saying like, yes, it was my son, he actually let the FBI investigate for 6 weeks and waited for his son to get arrested 6 weeks later. You know, a monstrosity of a situation. And it was one of those things where like literally like letters to the editor, it'd be like moms, like talk about, you know, outrage culture, right? Like, I don't believe Candace, like this happened, this girl, I believe she called herself. Like, you're like, I'm just looking for attention one night and I just decided to say I was going to hang my family from a tree.
Isn't it funny that someone would even have an opinion on that?
It's bizarre. Like,
I don't believe her.
Who even writes letters to the editor? Like, the whole thing is weird retrospectively, right? Like, I don't believe her, but that is what like life is about, right? Like,
that same lady's probably about to write a YouTube comment right now. I don't believe
don't believe her.
This is how you got on fucking Fox News.
Exactly. So it was the situation that like was just completely out of my control, and then as quick as it happened, these kids got arrested, and then as quick as it happened, it was over for like everyone, but not for me or these kids, right? Like, so I never wanted these kids to get arrested. Like, if no one, like, if this whole situation was taken out of my hands, people thought I didn't go to the police. Like, my teacher went to the police, it turned into the zoo. These kids were labeled publicly racists, right? The youngest kid in the car was 14. I'm not comfortable with ever labeling a 14-year-old racist, right? Or any of these kids racist. These are kids. And in my opinion, adults that fail to act like adults, and adults that fail to take a step back and say, okay, what would prompt these kids to do this? Why is it so easy to be mean, right? Why is it so easy nowadays for children to be mean? And no one, to me, like when I really thought about that, I went through like 5 years of like anorexia because of the situation.
Because of that one call,
So, like I said, I heard her talk about this incident thoroughly before, and which is why so let me just say this. First off, there was questions asking if I like Joe Rogan. Yes, I do like Joe Rogan. I actually wrote a piece on Joe Rogan where I talk about the experience of Joe Rogan's podcast is as if we all are Joe Rogan when he's talking to the guests that he brings on, because Joe Rogan doesn't try to act like this elitist, huge intellectual, whatever. Like, he just asks the questions that's on his mind organically. He doesn't edit his episodes. He will upload like a 5-hour conversation with no edits, or a 4-hour conversation. And he might say something a question that might seem simple to some people, but a lot of people might be thinking it and they're glad that he's asking it. It's like he's allowing the viewer to be in like the seat with him. And we watch this experience with two people with different point of views talking and having a real candid conversation. I like Joe Rogan. I know that people think he's problematic because of the people he brings on. But if you consistently watch Joe Rogan, you see he'll bring on Jordan Peterson and he brings on Miley Cyrus. He'll bring on, Brett Weinstein. He brings on Dave Chappelle. Like he doesn't have I don't feel like he has an agenda of just bringing in certain types of voices. He brings in a whole gamut of voices. And that's one big reason why I like him. And one big reason why I wrote that piece about him and Kanye West talking, because I felt like that was a great example of how he allows the guest just to talk, no matter if the guest sounds crazy or if the guest sounds a little off base or if they go on a tangent. He takes each person, I feel, seriously. Even if he's thinking in his mind, and this is just me thinking, even if he thinks in his mind, like this person, what they're saying is like absurd, he at least lets them get out what they're saying. He takes them seriously and he might combat that person right then and there. But I feel like he always does it in a way where I'm not trying to make you feel stupid, but I'm trying to make you see what you said might be heavily flawed. So I really do like Joe Rogan a lot. Candace Owens, people ask, do I like Candace Owens? I don't know her. Well, I could say the same about Joe. So I don't like Candace Owens, and I don't have to like her. And I don't, and it's weird, but this incident, because when I heard about her talk about this all the time, and she talked about it like with the TED Talk, like really, really like in detail. And then it seems like over the years when she talks about and brings it up, she really minimizes the experience. And I always think about to myself, like, why is she minimizing it? Is she minimizing it because it really doesn't have any bearing on her life? Or is she minimizing it because she doesn't want to I think she feels like she will upset or ostracize her base if she really talks about how bad this racist experience was when she brings it up. I'm not saying she needs to bring it up at all. I've said on this channel, and if you watch my video, Our American Problem, I talk in detail about a lot of racist incidents that's happened to me, but specifically two that was really actually dangerous. But it doesn't affect me right now when I'm 31. It just doesn't. And I can easily talk about it and not have emotional response to it, because I realize it's it was their problem. It was their ignorance. But I'll never minimize it though. I won't be like, well, it wasn't so bad that this white supremacist, self-proclaimed white supremacist, said he wanted to noose me up and lynch me and that I'm the N-word. It wasn't so bad. I'm never going to minimize it, but I'm not going to walk around like it's a huge chip on my shoulder, because that person's just ignorant and that person has a problem and they have no bearing on my life. So that's one reason why I have a little bit of issue with her minimizing the experience and minimizing racism in general. And not to say she has to talk about it in the same way the left does or whoever does, or inflate it, but to minimize it as if it doesn't really matter, or if the implications of it doesn't have any effects on the person. I have a problem with that. And in this video, which I think is actually big of her to have empathy with these teenagers that called her these names. And she said one was 14, 15, whatever. I think that's actually, that I would say with anyone that does that, that's big of that person to empathize and be like, well, why did they do this? What was the real reason behind this? I think that's great. to have that mindset, but I don't see her giving that same grace to other people. I don't see her giving that same grace to people, let's say on the left, or people in other organizations that she disagrees with. I don't see her giving that same like humanity-based thought process of why do they think the way they think? Even though I 100% disagree with them, why do they think this, or why do they want to organize for this when these solutions are making the situation worse? Like, I don't see her empathizing on their level, but she'll empathize with people that call her the N-word. That's something I'm like, I don't agree with at all. I'm not saying that you can't combat someone, but if you have so much empathy and wisdom to see that 14-year-olds saying that to you, is probably them just being immature mainly, or just going with the group, trying to be cool. And of course it's racist, but I would even venture to say people that do that are just like trying to be cool, trying to fit in, whatever, at that age. I'll say at that age. But what, like, if you're going to give empathy for that, you should give empathy for everyone. But she definitely objectively doesn't do that. And in particular, I feel like Candace became a conservative. And people say, oh, like I've seen people actually kind of mock this situation and say like, she's defending the people that called her the N-word. I would not say that. I think that it was actually the teacher and the liberal adults that I think she felt maximized the opportunity to use her situation to make them look good. I think she, and I don't know if she's going to go into it more, and there's only 3 minutes, so I'll just say this now. But she said she had an eating disorder, and that was a way of having control of her life after this incident. The incident with like the kids, and then the incident with just this being a viral moment, you know, in Connecticut, and the press being involved, schools being involved, the town being involved. And then she said, it being over, but not over for her. And that, I guess she felt maybe the experience was stripped away from her and used to make other people look good. Like, oh, look, we're helping the Black girl who was targeted with a hate crime, and touting her around and making her their pet project. I think that's how she felt. And I think that's what was the catalyst of her eating disorder, to gain control back over her life. And maybe that was the only way to gain that control, was to decide what she eats, when she eats it, how much she eats, or what she doesn't eat. And I believe that's why she is a big proponent for conservatives. I don't even think it's necessarily being a proponent for them, more so than it is just being against liberals, specifically white liberals, who she feels perhaps exploits minorities or Black people, or make them feel like they're victims all the time, whether this type of hate crime happens or not. That I think she thinks white liberals manipulate specifically Black Americans to make them feel like they're victims in order for white liberals to have something to save. And so I have sat with this thought for like a little bit years ago with Candace, because I don't like to just be like, I don't like this person. I find it very intriguing on why people think the way they think, especially with this circumstance with someone that was quote unquote Black liberal turned Black conservative, not just Black conservative, but like a very, very famous, well-known, popular Black conservative. And I'm just curious on the switch. I'm curious on the why. And then when I came across that TED Talk and then the other stuff, I was like, oh, this makes actual sense. And I can actually empathize with that. Like if that happened to me, I would feel a way where I'm like, were these adults trying to help me, or were they just trying to help their reputation as being, you know, the good ones, the good guys, the non-racists, the anti-racist or whatever, or trying to get like their woke card or whatever. Like I can empathize with that, but I do find Candace's delivery when she talks about, and I'm only going to like concentrate on Black Americans because she's Black on Black, and I'm just going to talk about that. And we have different point of views, very different, on how to communicate to our community. I don't agree with her communication skills. I just don't. I don't agree with how she goes about minimizing racism in America. Yes, I feel like we should not concentrate so much on trying to end racism because you can't end it. Like that's impossible. I've said this before. Not to say you should put up with it. No. Ending it, no. Like that goal should not be one. You can't end racism. But I don't like how she almost, I just see her giving a lot, like with like the Capitol invasion, there was a lot of empathy there for them. Like, well, what do you expect? The left did this, the left like had the blueprint, the left this, the left that. Almost like scapegoating them out of the responsibility of that. These were grown people who invaded the US Capitol and 4 or 5 people died and where a police officer died. And that she couldn't just call it out like this was horrible, this was horrific. And not to say I don't think that she didn't, but she definitely said, well, they were kind of provoked for years. Like this was inevitably going to happen in a way. And then I remember watching her with the George Floyd video and her saying like it was wrong. And I know that she talked about this with Mark Lamont Hill when they did their conversation on her show. I watched that too. And I actually really like that both of these minds that are completely the antithesis of each other and polarizing to each other sat down and talked. I really thought that was great. But that video of her, again, minimizing what happened to George Floyd. It's like, she's like, yeah, it was wrong, but this. It's like, so you'll do that for a man that died. And everyone has their own theories. Like, oh, he didn't really die from the neck on his, or from the knee on his neck. Like he died because of the drugs. You know what? Let's just say he was pumped with drugs. It's still okay that the officer had his knee on his neck? Was that still okay? If you still think that's okay, you should probably reassess why. Also with Candace Owens, I feel like, and I don't give my opinion unless I've like really watched and listened to the person for a long time. And I have had my eye on Candace just with stuff she says and things of that nature for years, because I'm always like, and it's not just on her, like there's a lot of people I have my eyes on who I might not agree with, but I might still listen to when they talk to people, listen to when they do have like, you know, Hawk Newsome on their show, or like Mark Lamont Hill, and like how these conversations happen. And I feel like that's where I can see the sincerity between them and another person that don't have their political view standpoint. And I will say when she does talk to people, I do have this sense of sincerity there. I feel like I do see it, but I would have to say like 20% of the time I feel like she's sincere, and then the other 80 I don't. I do feel like she plays to her audience way too much. I do feel like even if she says something that might be objectively truthful, it's wrapped up in like the most ugly way where no one's going to receive what you said. And then I start to think, well, is it really for the other person to receive it, or is it for her base just to hear her say these things about those people over there? Like, are you really saying these statistics to debunk what they said to help those people? Or are you just saying these statistics to just like placate to your base and make them feel good and make them feel like their points are validated because a Black woman said the thing that they're thinking? So that is that. The sincerity part is one big reason why I don't like Candace Owens. And I don't agree with her on a lot of things. And there's things I actually do agree with her on when she talks about like actual statistics and education, things like that. But the way she will deliver it, I'm like, why are you saying it like this? Like, I understand people can say the things they want to say, but for me, like, if you're really trying to help someone, you're not going to make them feel stupid while you're delivering the solution. I don't understand. And that's the difference between her and another Black conservative that I really like, Thomas Sowell. I really like Thomas Sowell. One, he's 90. Two, he's been doing this work for over 40 years? Way over that. What am I talking about? He's been doing this since he was like at least 25, 30, if I'm not wrong. So a lot of years, over 50. And written so many books. So many books this man has written. And he's an economist, and he's just a brilliant mind. He was actually number 10 on my top 15 minds that I find very inspiring. So I believe Thomas to be very sincere. And even if I don't agree with everything that he says, like on the way that he gets to the solution, because I do think there's things that are abstract, and yes, facts don't care about your feelings, but I feel like humans should care, and that there are facts, but you should like really see the gray area in these facts, I feel. But overall, I really like him a lot. And I do think like, yeah, he might have like a biting delivery, but it's not in a way where he's trying to make the person feel dumb. I think it's in a way where he's 90. It's almost like I see him as like that PE teacher where like you do like 10 push-ups and you do the 10 push-ups and you're about to get up and they're like, no, do 10 more. And you're like, I can't. Like you're thinking, I barely got through those 10. I can't. And they're like, no, do 10 more. Do 10 more. You might be crying like, oh, I can't do it. And then you just push through it and then you do 10. And then you just feel like, dang, I really like, I did more than I thought I could. I became more than I thought, or did more, accomplished more than I thought. And like that teacher knowing like, I knew you could, that's why I pushed you, because I knew you could do better than what you think. That is Thomas Sowell. I feel like he's like, you can do better than what you think. I believe with all of the knowledge he has and all the research he's done, he does see that certain communities can do better than what they think they can. Like he believes in them. He believes in America as a whole, or else he would have stopped a long time ago. And I think that is really why I admire him, because again, he started off as someone that was very liberal too. And I'm not to say like all liberals have it wrong. No, not at all. Like there's a ton of liberal people that are Black that I admire as well. But I see him as very authentic and sincere because of how long he's been doing this work. And that he's not over here trying to get clout on Instagram or like Facebook or Twitter. He's doing this because he's passionate about it and he cares. And it might come off like, oh, it's not wrapped up in a bow, but it's nowhere near as crass as how Candace is. And I do think it is with age. And yes, she's a millennial. I'm a millennial. And like we have different ways of just living in the world and delivering things and talking and using language and whatever. But I don't hate Candace Owens. I want to make that clear. I just don't like her. No, there are things that she experiences that I think is objectively just wrong. I know on Twitter, she recently posted a picture of her baby that she had with her husband, who is white. And a lot of people were, they weren't making fun of the baby, but they were saying things about her being a mother and like saying things about her having a white husband. And actually, I guess they were saying things about the baby, which I thought was really disgusting. Like, you shouldn't be saying that about any mother. Like, and who cares if her husband's white? Like, I've dated a lot of white guys. Who cares? I've dated a lot of white guys. I've dated a lot of black guys. I've dated, a lot of Asian guys. I don't, and like, when it comes to dating, like, I will date any race. I don't care what race you are. My dating history is the most random list ever. So yeah, that's stupid to say about anyone that dates outside the race. Who cares, dude? So I don't like harp on the hate train with Candace. It's such a cliche, but do unto others as you'll have them do unto you. I really believe like you reap what you sow. So I'm not going to just start going in on people. Like, I'm not going to make fun of people for no reason. Like, I'm out of high school. And it doesn't make me feel good at all. It does not make me feel good to say something like that to someone. Like, I just wouldn't. And yeah, it has to do with me loving the Lord. Yahweh, hello. So that's my thoughts about Candace, and hopefully that made sense.
I was the victim. Yeah, and
wow.
Yeah.
You went through anorexia.
Yeah, which is so weird now because like people that know me now, there's no way you never didn't eat, but I did not eat for like 5 years. I had issues with anorexia because anorexia is a disease that genuinely.
But I hope this answers people's questions that they had in regards to me liking or disliking Candace Owens or me liking Joe Rogan. But someone did ask a question, would I ever like go on her podcast, or would I ever have her come on here or just hold a conversation with her? Absolutely. I'll have dialogue with anyone. Would I talk to Joe Rogan? Heck yeah. Woohoo. I would love to be on his podcast. I would be on there for probably 10 hours because I go on tangents and he'd be like, okay, get her out. Just kidding. Well, I don't know. But yeah, I would definitely talk to her. Would I go out to dinner with her? Everyone should. I feel like most people, if you can, at least for me, I'll try to talk to almost anyone once. I will. So yeah, I definitely will talk to her. And you never know, you never know what would happen, but whether it would be good or not, I think it would be overall fine. I don't think it would be any brawl happening. And also someone asked a cool question. They said, what 15 people would you love to see on Joe Rogan's podcast if I can choose like any? And the funny thing is I could choose 15 people, but I would like multiple episodes with like 2 people on it. And I have my list right here. I can only come up with 9 episodes. So the 10th one, you guys, what person would you guys like to see on Joe Rogan's podcast if you could be in that magical fairyland where we can have that happen? But mine would be as follows. Episode 1, I would love Britney Spears on there. I am a Britney Spears. I love her. Love Britney Spears. Yes. I remember the first time I saw Britney Spears in 1996, I believe. Was it? Or 98? I don't know. But I remember coming home and I saw her on my TV. I was like, who is that? And then it was like Britney Spears. And this was a time where I thought my name was very generic. And then when I saw her, I was like, oh, my name is Bomb. So yeah, Britney Spears, I would love her to be on right now. Episode 2, Lauryn Hill. I love Lauryn Hill. She's one of my favorite singers. Minds, beautiful person. Love her. Number 3, episode 3, Thomas Sowell. We all deserve. Thomas Sowell needs a 10-hour episode. I really want Thomas Sowell on Joe Rogan. Episode 4, I would say Denzel Washington. I think Denzel Washington's just awesome. He's not just like a great actor, but he has a great philosophy of life that I would love to see in exchange with the thoughts of Joe Rogan, and just have it open and on air for us to listen to. Episode 5, Oprah. That's cliche, but I would like to see Joe Rogan talk to Oprah and it to be really organic and candid. Number 6, so I would like 2 men to be on together, Camille Foster and Coleman Hughes. I think that would be a cool episode. And episode 7, I would like me and Ta-Nehisi Coates. It was my former professor, and a lot of different thoughts of mine and ideas have developed since he's been my professor, and I would love to be on a podcast with him, with Joe Rogan, where him and I can talk and we can talk to Joe. I think that would be such a cool episode. Episode 8, I would love John McWhorter and Ibram X. Kendi. Need I say more why I want that? I would like that because, 1, I think they need to talk anyway, and 2, it would just, I think Joe Rogan brings like a common ground element to any discourse, I feel. So I would hope that a real conversation can happen rather than a debate. And number 9, just because this is my fantasy, NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys. Like all of them together talking about, you know, how the media like put them against each other, and how like they were the 2 rivaling boy bands, and 5 dudes here, 5 dudes there, and just how they, at least Backstreet Boys are still together, but how like NSYNC has gone on with like Justin becoming stardom, and the rest are like not as big as him, doing their own thing. Like I would just love to hear that, their backstory, how they felt about each other. I think that would be such, like, that's just like my 90s fantasy because I'm a 90s kid. So yeah, but number 10, what would you guys like to see? Like what person would you like to see on Joe Rogan's podcast? I'm very interested. But thank you for watching this episode. I really appreciate it. And there's more content on the way. Have a good week, and peace, love, left shade.